Hi guys, today we are doing a little tutorial on line thickness. So really this is going to be sort of 5 ways you can use line thickness to help tell your story, and there's going to be a little bonus one at the end there, so hang about for that. And cool, yes, let's just get cracking, let's get straight into it. So let's start with number 1, and that's separating layers. It's such characterful little boats, aren't they, tugs? I think of all the little ships that you see knocking around ports and things. I often think the tugs are the ones that just look like kids' sort of toys, really. They look like they'll give you a merry toot as they sort of go around their business. They very much remind me of sort of Thomas the Tank Engine type characters. We have items in the ultra foreground, if you will, stuff really close to you, bits further back, and then items to very much at the rear. Now, the items that are very much at the rear will have not only the thinnest outline, but they're going to have the least detail. The items that are further to the camera, closest to the viewer, they're going to have the most detail. So I've sketched that out with a 0.1, and because I'm talking about detail, I'm just going to put a little bit more here in the foreground to tell the story of these cobbles, because I quite like that. So 0.1, 0.5, 0.8. So the background, which was done with a 0.1. Oh, I need a sip of tea. My throat's killing me. That stays. So the next thing closest to the camera is the 0.5. Now, I'm going to go in and I'm going to just replace some of the lines that we put in there. This bollard here, use line thickness just to keep those a bit closer to the viewer, again to show depth. And one of the other things you have here, of course, is this quayside. In the foreground you have this bollard, and really this little bit of quay here, and maybe some details in the cobbles. So using the 0.8, the really big one, we're going to go in and we're going to put that in there as a highlight. And then what you could do is you could use the 0.8 and just do a couple of the sort of cobble areas, maybe just to try and show a bit of the shadow. And then here we have this key, and I'm going to put a little bit more detail in. Now, so that kind of shows you the depth. We've got the foreground is dark. In the foreground we've got the thick lines, and as you get back and back, the lines get thinner. But in this picture, because I think primarily the drawing is about the boat, I'd perhaps go back in with the 0.1, and I'd start putting in a few more details. I'd put in a few portholes. But in this example, I'm just showing you how you can use lines as a sort of layering process. Now, one of the ways I sometimes like to think about this, of like a children's theatre, or even like a big theatre, of how they do their scene sets, how you do your cutout scenes. So what they'll often do is they'll do I'll draw a simple version. So the bit of set at the front is, a tree, very abstract looking tree, and a sort of bank. And that's like a grass bank or something, and sitting on that grass bank is somebody, what are they doing? They're using a telescope, so it's all very abstract, and they're looking out to sea, and they've got a hat on. So that's your foreground. And then further back in the scene, say for example you have like a river, and there's a couple of boats on the river. I love my boats. And they're maybe moored at anchor here. Like that. So that's your sort of mid-ground. And then further back on the river, we could have a couple of other little boats. They're almost like abstract shapes. And then further back here, we have a sort of headland area. And then that middle layer is the 0.5, wrong pen. include the water in that, so we'll put the water sort of along there. And then in the extreme foreground you have, you know, add a little bit more to it now, but you have this tree shape. Tree sort of has ears. And then this so you can see as I'm going here, I'm vaguely sort of refining my line work, because that's the thing, is when you put a big line over the top of a thin line, you get the opportunity to slightly tweak what you've done previously, which is quite fun. And then we'll put some grass in here. So these are the values, you know, the stuff that's closest to you has the darker line, and then the next layer back has the medium. Yeah, so that's 0.8, and this is 0.5, and this background is your 0.1s. So that's using line thickness to sort of show the layers in a landscape. Number 2, depth in items. So say for example we draw something as simple as a box. What you can do is you can make some of these lines slightly bigger. Now I'm going to cheat a tiny bit here. Well, not cheat, but I'm actually going to do 2 lines and taper them. And that's an easy way of controlling line width as you go. Yeah. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstate that line around the outside as well. Now that does help to show the elements within that single item that are closest to you, such as this point here. Say, for example, if you were doing a cup. There you go. And again, what that does is it just helps to sort of explain that this area is coming slightly closer to the viewer. That's somebody cleaning ice off their car right outside my window. One of the perils of recording from home is you are subject to all the ambient noise in the street, and I often don't realise just quite how noisy that is in terms of people doing DIY or chatting, or somebody walked past my window the other day and burped and it was so loud I had to re-record that section. So yeah, with that example of like a, you know, sort of a little rowboat, I'm just trying to do some terrible reflection there, but you can see that what I've done is I've actually, like a wider thickness here, I've done that around that side of the gunnels, and that helps bring that closer to the viewer. So that's another thing, is if you're doing a single item and it's got like a contrast in it, a texture, as it gets further away from you, it's going to become less and less about the line thickness, and it's just going to get thinner and thinner, so you could do some kind of abstract repeating pattern just disappearing off there. Number 3, shadows. So what do I mean by shadow? Well, let me just draw something for you here. So that little simple bit of shadow under there really helps to sort of tell that story, in the same way that if you were doing a something as simple as a ball, and if you again wanted to try and show a little bit more of the form, you imagine that we're going to come down here. This is going to be a sort of quite an obvious example. There we go, but something like that just helps to tell that story. When it comes to the line thickness, one of the things you're going to want to do is put a thick line around the outside, and that is going to help you to really differentiate this item as being a singular item. It's not part of a system or something else, and obviously it might be part of the vehicle, but if you can see the whole tyre, then that's what that's going to look like. And then really the line thickness, this is where that really comes into play, because say for example this line that runs around here, right around the edge of the wheel, you might want to put a little bit of contrast in that line. There's also going to be a line here. But you see, what I've got here is the pen sketch, but when I come to actually putting the line thicknesses round, let's change to the back to the 0.8. What I'm going to do is, I know that there's going to be darker here, darker there, and then in here is going to be really dark. But it's not going to be very dark up there. It's not going to be very dark there. But this is going to be dark here. So it just helps to tell that story a little bit. And the other thing, in the end of the pen there is actually, I've just noticed in the end of these, there is a slight recess. So that looks something like that. And then again, I will use this and just make that area a little bit darker there. Number 4, point of focus. So this is really about contrast and attention. Okay, so if we again get that 0.1 pen. So there's just some quick notes sketched in, and they're all tied up with their little painters here. So actually what you call a rabbit that ties a boat up is a painter. Just to confuse things when you run a channel on YouTube that's about drawing and painting. Okay, so the whole of this scene is done with the same pen, and that's fine, right? My point is, I might want to draw attention to a particular boat in this scene, and it might not necessarily be the boat at the front. It might be Pamela. She's a bit further back, so if I get the pen and I start putting in some more detailed lines. So the items that are the most contrasty are the things that sort of draw your eye when you first look at it. So say, for example, if we were to suddenly put some line thickness in here for these people, sort of abstract almost shapes, these guys here. But you see, that's fighting with that. So you sort of bouncing, your attention's bouncing back from one to the other. There we go. Anyway, so that's an interesting one. You can use contrast to draw the eye to a certain part of the picture. So here's an example of, actually what some of those things look like in terms of line thicknesses. The item that's the closest to me here, this is a series of abandoned, Citroens, abandoned cars, is I've got quite a thick line around the outside of here. And what I've done here is to get the contrast in the line thickness, I've actually used white, and that stands out against the black. But one of the things that's the most punchy in this is this here. So I think the first place you go to is the maximum contrast is actually sort of this area. And then you're noticing this, and then your eyes off down here, and you're looking at the line of cars, and then eventually you're attracted more to this slightly abstract sky. So contrast is key. Sometimes in pictures, but it's key for me and my style. Everyone has a different eye. Number 5 is what I was trained in, industrial design. Now the fly technique is, you imagine that there is a fly crawling along the surface of this item, and every time the fly disappears, if out of view, you need a thicker line. So what that means is it's all the lines that are sort of disappearing away from you. So let's just sketch this out very, very quickly, and I can draw an example, because it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you actually see it in action. So I'm going to start off by doing a simple outline. So where the fly disappears, now the fly is going to disappear around this corner here. because it's going to go inside that recess. The fly is definitely going to disappear around the corner there. Around the corner there. If he keeps crawling over this surface, he's going to disappear around there. Just suggest some of that texture. And then there. Put in some cross-hatching or something like that. So that's the idea, is every time the fly goes around the corner, you do a thicker line. Now, you can also balance these up. Like, say, for example, if you wanted to bring that line there a tiny bit closer, and to make you focus on that, you can again put, and as I said before, if there's a bit of shadow, you can do something like that. The lines can vary in width, depending on where you want the eye to go to. So it's quite a powerful tool. So for the last bonus tip, which is number 6 of 5, go figure, we're going to be talking about grey fine liners and how they work with black fine liners and layering and things like that. So I have a couple of grey fine liners. Now this one is a 0.1, and as you can see, it's very, very it's very thin, but also because it's grey, you can't really see it. Now, if you were to use the 0.5, it kind of has a bit of the same sort of visual weight, really, as the 0.1 in black. It's not really that dissimilar. But one of the things I like to do when I do drawings is I'll often draft with this, because this works very much like a sort of pencil. So you can draft in 0.1, and then if you wanted to use the 0.5, you can go in and use that to sort of add in not only some details, but maybe some sort of shadow type thing. So really, the grey fine liners just give you, not only do they give you an opportunity to do some slightly more subtle colours, but one of the nice things is you can combine that obviously with the black. So here's a really good example of that, right? So what have we got here? We've got this picture of Copenhagen. Now all this is done in grey fine liner, the whole background, and then I've put a little bit more on as we've got further up. What I've done with the colours is the same. You've started here with some quite punchy colours, and this goes down to some softer colours here. And then what I've used is the fine liner in the foreground, really, to draw your eyes to these boats, because that is like the primary thing in the picture. It's a bit of a fighty one, this, because the colours are pushing you one way, and the contrast in the boats is pulling you another way. It's an interesting idea. But you can see here, the boats that are the closest are the ones that have put the most line thickness on. That's for sale on my shop if anybody is interested. So there you go, guys. There's a lot to think about there. As often with my tutorials, sometimes it's just simply saying, this is the way I do this one thing. Other times, like these, it can be a little bit thoughts around a subject. No, obviously, none of this is definitive, but it's all good to play with. So take some of these things, try them out on your drawings. Try doing some simple layered drawings where you use different line thicknesses. You may love the style, you may pick it up and do it for ages and it becomes your thing, or you may just use it occasionally. This really isn't the right way of doing things, it's just the way that I do them sometimes. So I'd like to just take the time to thank my patrons who are really keeping the channel, keeping this channel going at the moment, really. And I want to thank all you YouTubers. Please do leave a like, a subscribe, a comment, anything that really helps the channel. And I'd like to give it a full push in the new year and try and get some more some more videos done and think about some new cool content. Let me know if there's anything you fancy me covering on the YouTube channel. There may be subjects that I've covered already that I can refresh and go back on. Inevitably there will be. So stay well, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.